What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Elo Bandit, and today I am here to bring you the second part of my short informative series on the 1v1 metagame. If you haven't already seen my first introductory video on the topic, you can check it out here. This video will focus on the psychology behind playing the tier. That means I'll cover exactly what to do while laddering and battling. This video will have basically nothing to do with team building since I'm saving that for next time. The first topic is team preview. Who do you pick based on your opponent's Pokemon? How does your elo affect this? First off, let's take a look at an example. We're assuming two things in this scenario. First, our elo is somewhere between 1200 and 1500. This means fairly standard teams and standard picks. Just like most matchups, you will have a Pokemon with an edge. Having an edge is a little bit like playing rock, paper, scissors against an opponent with two rocks. You can either pick your paper Pokemon that beats the majority of your opponent's team, or you can assume that they know this and pick the Pokemon that beats the third Pokemon. Let me give you an example. Say you have a Jolly Mega Pinsir with Protect, Giga Impact, Swords Dance, and Close Combat. You have a standard Whimsicott and a Charizard Y. Your opponent has a Charizard, a Mega Venusaur, and a Golem. You don't know what Charizard your opponent has, but that shouldn't make a difference for this scenario. Your edge Pokemon is Mega Pinsir. Pinsir outspeeds and OHKOs both Charizard and Venusaur, regardless of which Zard your opponent has. For the purpose of this example, let's assume that the Charizard is a fast offensive Y. The only thing stopping your Pinsir from winning all three matchups is Golem. His Sturdy will prevent Pinsir from OHKOing, and he can knock you out with Stone Edge, which he gets 2 chances to hit, assuming he has a Custat Berry. So let's consider our other options. What would Charizard do? Charizard Y has an even matchup versus our opponent's Zard, and also beats Venusaur. He is similarly obliterated by the Golem. There's really no reason to pick him over Pinsir since he covers the same threats, though not as well. Now we look at Whimsicott. It has no chance against either Charizard or Venusaur getting one-shot by Blast Burn and Sledge Bomb respectively. However, it does successfully stall out and defeat Golem. So, our real options are Pinsir and Whimsicott. The safe, consistent option is Pinsir. The risky but rewarding option is Whimsicott. Most players would pick Pinsir in this situation, and they can end up winning. However, we need to take into account the opponent's point of view. Charizard 50-50s your Zard, beats your Whimsicott, and loses to your Pinsir. Venusaur beats Whimsicott, but loses to the other two. Golem, of course, beats Zard and Pinsir while losing to Whimsicott. Golem has the highest percentage win chance against you, therefore your opponent is more likely to pick Golem than anything else, meaning that you should choose Whimsicott. I know it seems a bit convoluted, but the best way to win consistently against people you've never fought is to look at the battle from their point of view and pick based on what they're likely to pick. I'm going to bring up elo really quickly to point out that at lower elos, it's actually more beneficial to pick the mon that covers the most threats, since many low-level opponents don't have a good understanding of the metagame. For example, they may think that their Charizard beats Pinsir since Fire beats Bug, and pick it based on that. However, the higher up you get on the ladder, the more intelligent your opponents get, and the more likely they are to make smart picks. Basically, what I'm trying to say is look at the battle from your opponent's point of view. The best example I can give you is my personal team, Mega Mawile, Porygon-z, and Mega Sableye. If I ever run up against a team with a Charizard, I know the odds are it will be picked, since it beats my Mawile and most of the time beats my Sableye. Players on the ladder are very predictable this way, and I'm able to win match after match by picking Porygon whenever I see a Charizard. Find out what Pokemon you can bait in and have your counter ready to pull whenever you see them. Moving on to rematches. In such a small tier, you can end up playing the same person over and over. The general rule of thumb is losers switch, winners stay. If you beat a person and come up against them again, assume that they will switch to whatever beats the Pokemon you just beat them with. If you lost to them last time, assume they will stick to that Pokemon. This does not work all the time, especially the higher you get on the ladder, but it is relatively accurate and most players follow this mindset. Take advantage of it. Another thing to keep in mind while playing the same ladder over and over is counter teaming. This means looking at the ladder, use Watch a Battle to see what teams people at your elo are currently using, and choosing your team based off that. Since the Pinsir Whims Zard team has a crippling weakness to Scarfed Kyurem Black, you should consider using either a separate team with appropriate checks like Mega Mawile, Mega Slowbro, or Custat Porygon-z, or switch your Charizard's EV spread to a defensive one that can tank an Outrage or Fusion Bolt and KO back with Blast Burn. Counter teaming is very popular once you get up to around 1500 elo, so expect your opponents to sometimes switch up their teams if they start losing. I'd like to talk briefly about the psychology behind actual battles. Not every match is determined by the two Pokemon picked. There are lots of battles where prediction and game knowledge can get past a poor or even matchup. For example, here's a match between my Mawile and an Aegislash user. This match could have gone either way, so let me show you how I played it. Turn 1, I hit Sucker Punch, expecting either an attack or King's Shield. I lose nothing if he shields, and I get off tons of damage if he attacks. Since I have Intimidate, I'm not worried about a physical variant at all, and I instead play as if I expect a special Aegislash. My opponent reveals Substitute, which could be an issue. He also reveals Leftovers, which means I don't have to worry about a potential weakness policy. I Sucker again with the intention of breaking his sub, and he gets some damage off with Shadow Ball. Notably, he doesn't do quite half my health or get the Spadef drop, meaning I can tank another one and have some leeway with my moves. I predict another Substitute, so instead of Sucker Punching, I instead go for Iron Head. This breaks his sub and starts a mind game. Will I Iron Head again next turn, so should he shield, or will I predict that and Sucker Punch? Not wanting to take that risk, my opponent chooses to King's Shield, as I do try to Sucker Punch. Keep in mind, I'm not running Swords Dance on this set, otherwise I probably would have used it there. I predict another Substitute, knowing that he'd like to get damage off safely from behind it, so I go for an Iron Head to break it. Now, I guess correctly that he's going to try and break this cycle of back and forth, so he subs again and I correctly predict it with another Iron Head. At this point, I can tell my opponent is frustrated and desperate, so I Sucker Punch predicting attack, finishing off the Aegislash. Now, let me show you a very interesting match between myself and Bleed the Shark, aka Ecstatic Cold, the top player on the ladder right now as I'm making this video. The matchup is my Custat Berry porygon-z versus his Greninja. If it were anyone else, I would go for Endure turn 1 expecting a Hydro Cannon before finishing with my Custat boosted Hyper Beam, but I know that I can't just do that against someone this good. I know that he knows that Scarfed Porygon beats Standard Greninja. He is not Standard Specs Greninja, he is instead Mixed Life Orb. I don't know this yet, but I do know that he's not likely to kill me turn 1. If I'm Scarfed, he loses if he clicks Hydro Cannon, and if I'm Custat, he still loses if he clicks Hydro Cannon. I know that he will either use a weak move in order to deal damage without putting me in Custat range, or use Shadow Sneak to make himself invulnerable to Hyper Beam. He does the second, and my Hyper Beam goes right through him. I have successfully bluffed a Choice Scarf, and he now has no issue clicking Hydro Cannon. I predict this and endure the hit before finishing him off with my Hyper Beam. A very quick note about something that comes up a lot in 1v1, the Sucker Punch conundrum. One Pokemon will be spamming Sucker Punch against a low HP Mon who refuses to use an attacking move. If you are the Sucker Puncher, the way to win is to just keep Sucker Punching, but to vary the time in between move choices. This can bait your opponent into thinking you're going to mind game them, while you continue clicking Sucker Punch. You can do the same thing as the defending Pokemon. And I'd recommend attacking on the 6th possible Sucker Punch, which is about when most people give up and go for their own attacking move. There are lots of matchups where the battle can go either way. Some are decided by players, and some are decided by hacks. Never forfeit a match you have a chance to win. Ridiculous hacks happens every day. Take, for example, this match between my Mega Mawile and a Ditto user. Ditto has a terrible matchup here. It only copies regular Mawile and can barely scratch me. The only way it can win is if it gets extremely lucky with flinches and crits, which is exactly what it does. Hacks happens. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. This brings me to the next topic, luck versus skill. To someone who doesn't play 1v1, this game looks extremely luck-based. While there is a significant element of luck, the players who succeed on the ladder are those who correctly utilize their skill at team building, counter-teaming, team preview predicting, and battling. Good luck and bad luck happen to everyone who plays enough, and luck isn't enough to move you far from where you belong on the ladder. The very last topic is a word of warning about streaks and gambling. Win and loss streaks are relatively common playing this tier. A couple losses in a row can cause you to go on tilt, second-guess yourself, and make poor choices in team preview. Similarly, a win streak can cause you to play more confidently and put your opponent on tilt. My advice is, if you lose more than a few games in a row, take a break before you come back. If you win a bunch, play until you lose 2, then take a break. Playing your win or loss streaks correctly can dramatically change your position on the ladder. Beware the gambler's fallacy. Just because you lost a bunch does not make you more likely to win. Don't fall into a hole of loss after loss. This game can suck you in and make you addicted. Learn when to cut your losses and how to quit while you're ahead. This is the best advice that I can give you for laddering. That wraps up this episode of 1v1. Stay tuned for next time where I'll go over the particulars of team building in good sets. Thanks for watching.